All right. Welcome back. Episode 2. Let's recap real quick. How did us, Mason and Remy, two guys with no experience in country music, end up becoming St. Louis Magazine A-list award-winning best morning shows, Missouri Broadcast Award winners, Country Music Association Award nominees, and end up uprooting some of the country's most legendary country stations and, losing those jobs and so on and so forth. That's where we are here in episode 2 of, by the way, I really like Mason and Remy, No Frequency.
Yeah.
It has so many meanings. But thank you for coming by and checking it out. How are you, my friend? Remy, you well?
I'm doing well. We're in the heat of the summer here in St. Louis area. It's so bad. It's and we just survived the 100 and whatever heat index last week, and now this week when you go outside, it's so humid.
Yeah.
And we have a cornfield in our backyard. So like at night when you go outside, it just like hits you in the face. It's like all the corn smell and then all the heat and humidity. You're not missing anything by being away from St. Louis.
I'm only a few hours north, but I am also surrounded by corn and not as much swamp feeling. But I know what you're talking about. Yeah. I remember it well and don't miss it at all. But it's good to hear you're well. And it was also good to see a lot of faces that I haven't seen or heard from in a very long time. I want to give a thank you to everybody who reacted. We have talked about doing this, and I'll be okay. I don't want to speak for you, but I wasn't sure if anybody was out. Like, are we forgotten? Are we done? Who cares? Are we just doing this for us? You never know because even when we were working together, they gas us up, right? Like they gas you. They're going to tell you guys are great. People love you. Look at the ratings. Well, every time I got canned, I didn't get a ton of calls. So I don't know if that's, I didn't know if the music when we were on was just hitting in the right time, or if our regional pandering was really that good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was cool to see people, happy to see us.
Yeah. Yeah. I think there was a general happy to see us back together again. From a lot of people. There's another section of people that just want to hear the tea. They just want to hear all the drama.
And an equal amount of people who
kind of alluded to that. Sorry.
Yeah. There's an equal amount of people who just want a Friday jam, I think, too.
Yeah.
But I think we'll get into all that stuff. So I just wanted to say thanks to everybody who checked it out, and a lot of people who were like, "Oh man, where can I listen?" Here. On YouTube, or I don't know, find us on Instagram or TikTok or wherever you live on social media, Facebook, X, whatever that is. No station, because I don't know. I think the one thing we're going to be doing with this project that we're doing is making sure neither of us probably work in radio ever again. I just have a feeling that is like going to be a side effect of what we're doing here. Yeah, and we're not doing it to spite anybody. Maybe it's just our own insurance of making sure we never do that again.
Yeah.
And maybe I'm speaking for just me. It's something
I think you could definitely speak from the terrestrial radio standpoint. Like, you tune into a radio station to your favorite morning show in the morning, that kind of radio, because I feel like podcasts or this delivery method is a totally different ballgame, right?
Yeah.
I feel like this is something that we've always wanted to do, which is not play a whole lot of music in the morning and just talk and entertain. And not to get too deep too fast, but I think that's probably one of the things that hindered us along the way was all these production people, all these programming people saying the music is the star, the music, play the music. So, but if you look and you listen, all the best shows, all the greatest shows that you connect with the most play like 1 or 2 songs an hour, and that's it, because you have an opportunity to bond with that morning show. We were always in the 8 to 9 song an hour range, which gave us a total of maybe 9 to 11 minutes to talk an hour.
Right.
So yeah, I think that this is something to get back to the podcast, and this is something that we've always wanted to do. So
for sure. As a music delivery system, radio has failed at this point. Big artists that are big artists don't need radio, and the artists that are on the radio are not uh, and I'm going to start throwing shots fired here, man. It's just sometimes there's some inauthenticity that I think we all can see, right? Like, how many times have you heard about industry plants in different places? No
Yeah.
offense, but like, is that TikTok artist really discovered on TikTok?
Yeah.
I don't know.
Gosh,
But
there's so much of that now.
there's
It's
that's what's
insane.
wild, man, and I just don't wanna be a part of that. Like, I don't wanna have to lie to anybody. Like, I don't
Yeah.
and that was we ended up and we're gonna get into that in this episode, how we did a great job of lying to a lot of people for a long time. Because as we came in, where we left off, was getting the call to come from where we were working separately, Remy doing a night show, on the top 40 station, me doing the afternoon show. We had filled in on a morning show for 1 week. We drank margaritas and planned things out. Does that sound like professionally ready for people? Like, ready for the experience? I mean, I don't know if there ever is a place where someone is ready. You got to throw people into the fire a lot of the time. I think I've realized, not just in radio, but in life, if you're going to really get somewhere with it and learn, you got to dive into the deep end. So how did it go from Bloomington, Normal, Illinois market 253 up to like the top 20, St. Louis, major market, insane. It's the call, the interview is where we left off. I remember we were fighting when we
Yeah.
got the call, because Remy wanted to make a video and wanted me to shoot it and not be in it. I'm thinking back, like, was I
Why don't you
offended
be
he didn't
my
want
my
me?
camera guy?
He wanted
My
me to be
my
the camera guy. I
my you're
couldn't
my best boy.
I couldn't tell if I was offended that you didn't want me in it or that you wanted me to film it, and I also knew I wasn't gonna do well because I got the shaky hands.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah.
that was the call that was the time when we got the call from St. Louis. Someone heard the show. A shout out to Mark Anderson, who was a former boss that I worked with in, Michigan, in my hometown. Um he heard it thanks to, I think, Dave Adams sending him, our program director, our boss in at WBNQ, which is a crazy thought. Imagine your boss telling someone else to hire you.
Yeah.
Like, I think Dave knew he was about to create some headaches for himself having to find somebody, but I think it was a very cool thing to do as a manager. You know what I mean? I think as a manager, it was cool to see someone go, I think, you guys have more than what we're doing here.
Yeah.
I don't think
Yeah.
that happens a lot anymore. At least
It
it never
doesn't.
happened.
Yeah, those opportunities diminished greatly as we continued down our radio career path. It just and I to the point now where I didn't even think that there's a whole lot of opportunities available for anybody in the radio industry. But yeah, you had said the interview process, and I was trying to remember what that was like, and I don't remember much of it. I do remember driving. We drove down to St. Louis together, right?
Yeah, I drove down with you, and I think you had the Rabbit at the time.
Yes.
In the little Volkswagen Rabbit, we drove 3
Yeah.
hours from, Bloomington Normal down to St. Louis to interview, for the job, and this was our like, again, we were kind of having a little friendly fight as it happened. We talked on the phone and said, "Hey, do you wanna actually do this?" And we jumped in. Is that how you felt at that moment? Like, did you feel like, "What am I doing?" Or, "What is this?" Or were you like, "This is it"? Do you remember?
Um, I being 20 something at the time, young 20s, was working at State Farm and hating every second of my day there. But I was working in creative services, so I was doing like photos and videos, but we were shooting internal stuff. So there I did get to travel with the job, but there was very much of my life included making HR sexual harassment videos. And I believe that I still star in some of those. I'm always the bad guy for whatever reason.
Because you have to cast somebody and you don't wanna cast anybody else, right?
Yeah.
Like,
But
that's so
I just
funny.
remember getting paid nothing there, not being motivated because I was a production assistant and part of my job was to put makeup on guys. And that to me really at the time got to me as I'm putting makeup on the CEO, and he's like, "Where's the pretty girl that usually does this?" And I was like, "Wow, that's me." And I have not washed my brushes in forever. So here's some facial whatever.
Here's 25 people's facial.
Yes, here's some dead skin cells. Have fun. But yeah, it was pretty immediate, and I think the biggest drive for me was the market size, and that being major market, going from, because I wanted to do radio forever, and I was at B&Q, but the call is what everybody waits for, right?
Yeah.
That major market opportunity. So to answer your question, I think it was a pretty easy decision.
Yeah.
Because of all of that. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Cause I remember you had like traveled to a couple of places about maybe working at them. So you had the golden handcuffs of coming up in Normal, Illinois and going to Illinois State University and getting a job at State Farm. And you could have just done that, but you were still looking for like places to go and do radios. I had always admired that about you, is that you had this creative itch that you needed to scratch. And even with, can you imagine if you'd still be sitting down there in the creative services department of State Farm right now? How different life would be.
I have some friends who are there, and they've said that the decision that I made was probably a good one. So that always helps. Yeah.
Oh, that's nice to hear. But it's just funny how these paths in our life can be so defining. So yeah, Remy jumped at it, and I feel like I did too, because I was of the mindset that this was what I was going to do and what I had done with my whole life. At this point, this was 2010, right? That we had gotten the call.
Yep.
And we were, I know I had been on the air for about 13 years at that point as a whole. So it was in my 30s, and trying to find my own voice. And I felt like I was starting to make it, figure out what I wanted to do. I was very web heavy in my stuff because websites were just starting to become a thing. And I was trying to put polls online and be like, we can access, like, we don't even need people to call. They can vote on the website now. We don't have to talk to them, like, things were starting to go that way. Little did we know that would be the downfall of radio, but also, a tool that they could utilize that maybe they never really have properly. So there's so much, in those moments when you are that person, when you are chasing that dream, when you are young and you are hungry and somebody goes, "You want to do this?" You just show up because there was a philosopher who once said, if you only had one shot, one opportunity, mom's spaghetti. You understand what I'm saying? You jump at it because you never know if it's, you never know if it's going to come back, or you're going to have that opportunity again. So we dove in head first. And if you listen to the last episode, you know that we were working in top 40 and we did not have any country music knowledge or experience. I wonder if that is a surprise to some people right now. Because when we started in April of 2010, I think it was April 2010, right? Something like that. April, May, somewhere around there of 2010. We had a lot to learn. So we hopped in the Rabbit and drove to St. Louis. I vividly remember the McDonald's parking lot where we stopped before, because I think we both had to go to the bathroom after the 3-hour drive. And then that's where we killed like 10 or 15 minutes before the interview. Now, if you had to ask me what that interview was like, I could not tell you. I do not remember.
I don't really remember it either.
I don't know.
Mark was weird. I think that's the biggest takeaway. I was like, gosh, he's that type of person that you just can't read.
Can't read, yeah.
So hard to read.
Mark, I had worked with in mid Michigan before, so I had known him well. And I think he and I had discussions, and I was like, "This, trust me, Remy's great. Like, we could do this." But then, you switch into the business mode where it's like, okay, now it's time for the interview, and you have to actually check the boxes. And I think at that point we had met the GM, maybe in that time too. Did we interview with Beth at that time?
We sat down with Beth. Yeah,
okay.
I remember that was awesome. She was great. I think she's always been great. And even now, I think she's been out of radio for a while now.
I think so, yeah.
And she'll still reach out on Facebook and comment on the family or whatever, which is nice. So
yeah,
shout out to Beth Davis
for sure. absolutely. We got to give all these flowers to people while we can, because there were people who fought for us, people who knew what we were doing and got it.
Yep.
And there were a lot who didn't, but we'll get there. So shout out to the team that brought us on to KSD in St. Louis, and let us play, because sometimes it felt like that. I remember I think it was a short process, but it always is in radio when you're going to like, hey, the interview is on like the 15th, you start in 2 weeks. You know what I mean? Congratulations on the job, sign here. You start on the 1st. Can you be here on the 30th? You know, pack up your life. Doesn't matter what kind of leash you got. Let's go.
Yeah. Do you remember what the number was?
The number of the first salary that we made.
First salary. Do you remember what that number was?
Man, so I know working in market 253 or whatever Bloomington Normal was, doing afternoons, I want to say I was at like $31,000 or $32,000 a year for a single guy in his 30s. Like, and then on top of this, so a lot of things people don't know about radios. There's talent fees for remotes and live reads and things like that. So like if you do a live commercial, or if you go out and do 2 hours of a broadcast from someplace, there's additional income, but that is not guaranteed. Okay. I want to make sure you know that.
They always tease you with it
for the rest of this. Yes. That's the carrot. Another carrot that they dangle is this is your salary. But you know, if we get remotes and we get live reads in there, there is opportunity for more. And then they dangle the carrot of, and if you do well, syndication, you can get on other stations and we can pay you 1/5 of what we would normally pay a talent. And we don't have to pay healthcare. It's pleased. So we'll get there too. There's so much to cover, but this is kind of what gets you in our first major market job. I want to say it was like 43,000.
Yeah. I still have my contract. I still have that contract. And I think mine, you got paid a little bit more than me because of your experience. And I think it was like 42.5 or something like that.
I think I didn't accept the first offer. I think I pressed a little bit.
Oh, you did? Nice.
I think I did. Yeah.
At that point, I just signed things. So.
Well, I mean, and that was like your first real full-time radio job at that point, right? So huge opportunity for you. So like no mistake to just go like, I'm in and I'm here, you know? But that should, and look, there's 2 of us, right? So when you think about a budget, really you got about 85,000 for the 2 of us, right? So okay, I see how you could start there. We quickly had some raises, and we'll talk about that maybe in this episode, maybe in the next one, because we're kind of on our eras tour. If you haven't picked up on it yet, we're kind of going through the different phases of our career, and this is right when we accepted the job, right when we talked, when we had the interview. So yeah, $43,000 a year was the first morning show salary that we got in St. Louis. And I too was happy because I knew it was only going to go up. Like I was confident in our abilities and knew that talent fees from Bloomington Normal in St. Louis were very different. You know what I mean? Like it might have been $45 an hour in Bloomington Normal, but it was like $150 an hour in St. Louis. So
and astronomical. Anything up. That's another thing that people don't know is that when you're in a small market radio station and you show up to an event, the tent is up, the table's up, the skirt is on the table, all the things are set out. All of that is done by the jock. They set up the whole antenna, all the things.
Yeah. I remember
when you go to a major market, someone does that for you, which is amazing.
Yeah. So you would just
pay more.
Yeah, you would just show up at the event, but those folks, the promotion staff would drive the van and set up your remote. So you should just be able to show up and do your job, which is as a talent to entertain and host or whatever. But yeah, when you're in Bloomington Normal, you do so much more, right? Like there was the antenna you talked about, like you had to put the antenna together and put the thing on it and then drive the car over top of the antenna holder and then push the antenna up and put it into the thing and then turn it. Definitely risking electrocution in many opportunities. But that you pay your dues like that so that you realize what you have. I please, gosh, I hope that I treated every part-time promotion staff person with respect because I understood how garbage that was and like how hard that is and how much work. It's the real work of like getting out and on the street. So thank you to anybody who ever set up a tent for me or you know, set up a table full of free stuff, whatever it was. I always tried to treat those folks like, I know you're out here working. I'm sorry.
Yeah,
'Cause
seriously.
we did that. But sorry. So let's go back to the interview process and where we started. Like obviously we accept the job, right? Like we'd be fools to not accept this job. Large company came asking for us. This is, I think, it's another privilege that I don't know if you realize that we've had, is that we haven't really had to apply for many jobs.
Yeah.
Like filling out a resume and applying isn't something that we've had to do. And I recognize that. We're lucky that in our body of work or whatever has spoken for itself. And I think that's cool. I didn't know it could be like that. So we were riding a wave of holy crap, this is happening, I think. So do you want to talk a little bit about like the first bit, or anything that you remember from the process, from the interview to getting started, getting ramped up?
Yeah, I remember being very uncomfortable from just this is my first time away from my family, living in a whole new environment and now it's not the middle of a cornfield anymore. This is a major metropolitan area, right?
Mm-hmm.
So they had put us up in an apartment complex called the Metro Lofts at the time, which still exists. We've driven by it several times. Super nice. It was like lofts, cement floors, very like modern and sleek. And Forest Park was right down the street, so I was always going over there and running around. And
so
but I do
vividly remember you from where you sat in the studio, could look to your left and see the arch out the window every day, and look across the street and see Forest Park. And we would get there just as the sun is coming up. It was so much of a surreal moment, right? Like, because we're not big city guys by any means, and this was our first time in an environment like this.
Yeah. And so we had to start, now that we've got the job and everything's happened, we have to like start working together and coming up with things. And there's so many of these early videos of us at the Metro Lofts doing 7-second videos and all these like random things that we were trying to come up with our benchmarks. If you're not familiar with benchmarks, that would be like the Friday Party Jam or the Unprofessional News, things like that we can rely on every day and just basically plug and play. We've got the title of the thing. Now let's put some content within the title. We were doing a lot of note taking and a lot of spitballing in that time, but I don't want to skip around too much, but I think another thing that took me by surprise is that we were there before we actually started. We were there for a week beforehand and hung out at our program director's apartment complex and just listened to all the other morning shows for a week straight, which I thought was interesting.
Yeah.
So we listened mainly to the competition. And if I'm remembering this correctly, this is when this was at the start of a Cardinals season, and Cornbread was sitting up on top of the parking deck with his trailer, and he had been camping there for a week or whatever leading up to the actual opening day. So
big radio stunt. Yeah. Morning guy, obviously big, huge Cardinals fan. So he's out there going over the top. That was kind of like what we did in radio, right? That's what every radio person does, is I feel like has always been the job, is make something bigger than it is, right? And try and I guess identify or relate to your audience in that he's a Cardinals fan, I'm a Cardinals fan, I like this guy, well, I can tell we're buds, you know what I mean? That kind of thing was always where we were going with it. And so we spent the first couple weeks in town. So yeah, like you mentioned, the Metro Lofts, they put us up in a really nice place and said, hey, take your time to find a place to live. We'll put you up for a little while. In this time, while we're going back and forth to and from the Metro Lofts, by the way, I meet my wife. Little did I know. But I remember living in the Metro Lofts when that happened, because I would have to go back. All my things were still in Bloomington normal, so I'd have to go back every weekend and get something. But I remember in the Metro Lofts, and you talk about the videos that we shot, and I remember us listening to these different shows. And obviously we were on the country station, and there was a competitive country battle happening in St. Louis on the radio. And this is the early era of the internet. Like, we're still in this early era, and you and I are very active on social media on Twitter, which happens to have been invented by a guy, Jack, from St. Louis. So I don't know if that played a part into what we were doing. Remember I talked about how did we hit lightning in a bottle? Like, was it just the music in the right time, or were we like so on point with the regional stuff that we did, like the shit St. Louis and say video?
Yeah.
Like, were we just so identifiable as that's how we were successful, or what was it?
Yeah, I think another factor, and I often reflect on this, given how difficult it is to cut through on social media these days, because they want you to buy everything, they want you to pay for it. The amount of reach that we would get on just a stupid blog post or something, we get like 45,000, 50,000 person reach on a post. And that just does not exist anymore. That has been totally clamped down. So that probably had a lot to do with it too. That we were so available and making stuff for social media, but then it's like the floodgates were just open. They were just letting everybody. It was a wild west, and now
Yeah,
they've clamped it all down.
they have not figured out the algorithm at this point. So I feel like if you caught a story, or like we figured it out. I remember like sharing stories quickly and going, you got to be the first person to share this as it breaks. Otherwise, everybody else is just a copy of your blog or whatever. And then that bit us once or twice. Let's not forget to talk about the copyright issue that we got into that one time when we used the photo. We have so many stories of how we got in trouble that like we seriously have a document with all of them in there that I can't wait to share. But so we need to figure out. You had mentioned our benchmarks. We are listening to all these other shows. The stations at this point, radio as a whole, is transitioning from like a terrestrial media to, hey, we're streaming. You should check out our websites. So they literally had bonus goals set up for website analytics,
Yes,
and we
yeah.
were seeing them get blown out of the water every time we would start like doing these things. So we were really successful really quick, but that's kind of where we wanted to focus, because that was our wheelhouse of social media stuff. Remy had such great video experience, and I had all this radio experience. I really felt like there's no way we can lose. Like we're gonna not only bring this medium into its next form of like what basically streaming is at this point, when you think about it, what podcasting is, what Joe Rogan is doing, or what all these guys are doing is basically what we wanted to do was, um, entertain in this area. So we would listen to all these shows, we would hear what they were doing, we would try and find something unique, and that's where I think we were talking about, like, for me, I'll start with the unprofessional news. I wanted it to be the Daily Show on the radio, right? Like when you watched the Daily Show, it was so tough to be, and maybe you remember this, like, because I know a lot of times you were reading the news. It's hard to find a line between I am giving you the news, but I'm also a human with a sense of humor like you. I know that when I listen to the news, I look at the guy and I go, and I start making fun of them, right? Like this is human nature. But if you are on the radio, why can't you do the same thing? I think it's more identifiable or relatable to someone than it is buttoning up and giving the news in a like you don't even see real news people doing that anymore. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like there's no real news. I turn on the news now and they're standing in front of a green screen of a viral video talking about it for 10 minutes. And I'm like, what are you doing? Give me the weather. I just don't understand what's happening sometimes there, and I don't think they know either. But I feel like our business was in a state of we didn't really know what was next, and so we were trying to figure that out. So with the unprofessional news, wanted to make fun of the news. I wanted to have some satire with that. We had like a lot of webisodes, a lot of internet videos, right? We had a lot of these moments where we wanted to put it on YouTube, and so we had Friday jams. We had like viral today, trying to bring people these viral videos, play them on the radio. There was nobody playing audio of these things that everybody was talking about. Um, and
Before
that
you
was,
move too far, can we play an unprofessional news?
oh man, you want you want to revisit one?
I don't remember. I don't know what one I chose,
So
but
I am. I hate everything I ever did. So no, I don't. But if you want to, yeah, let's go ahead. Let's
Let's
do
see
it.
what this one, because we would upload these to YouTube and it
Oh
would
man.
just be the Mason and Remy webisodes, and there would be no video to this. It was just audio, I think.
Yeah,
So
yeah. So
I'm
we
gonna
saw
go
the
ahead
platform.
I'm gonna go ahead and play this one. We'll see what this is about.
Okay.
Now with Mason and Remy and
Unprofessional news.
From the Unprofessional News Desk, I am totally spent on elections.
serious.
Done. Election coverage. Every news station said, let's go to Sally McNewsy Pants, who's out with blah, blah, blah campaign in random city. Seriously, like 30 minutes after the polls closed, they were projecting winners. How is that even possible?
Really?
Let's check the spread. If you had Roy Blunt over Carnahan in the office pool, great job. Over in Illinois, it seems that Mark Kirk has edged out Alexi Janulius for the Illinois Senate seat. Pat Quinn and Bill Brady are still hanging out in extra innings.
This is cutting edge election coverage, and right now, like, why is this not what's happening? I would watch that.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, bud, but you were like ahead of your time on this. When I see this, I think Anderson Cooper and Andy Cohen.
It's a sports report.
I love it. You even were like, let's check the spread. Oh my God. Such a great, I'm sorry. I just wanted to pause and talk about how great you were in this moment. So,
I think you probably wrote it, but let's go on.
It's still too close to call. Hey, propositions and also amendments all passed. Let that roll out. I want to jam for a little bit.
Man.
All right. Ray Krossick brought a gun to a knife fight.
Former St. Anne councilwoman is accused of paying 14 and 15-year-olds $1 a sign to steal Democratic candidate Eileen McGagan's yard signs.
Oh my God, it's no holds barred. Anything goes. It's a cage match. My God.
That's dirty politics and some form of child labor violation, I'm sure.
Seriously, those kids were just trying to be entrepreneurs.
All right. I'll give you that.
We could go forever on that. Do you remember the reverb? Do you remember the reverb?
I heard it in there.
Put a little bit of reverb on the station. That was like 2% reverb because it tested better or something like that.
Yeah, that's a weird thing that happened in radio. AM talk radio stations specifically, and I think it's to fill the silence because it's weird to them. But yeah, man, a lot of stations have the reverberation on the voice processing. It's so weird to hear that back, and especially the un. Like I haven't heard that in years, which is wild to think that we just
pretty tight. It
was a good one.
Like you said, you hate everything you've ever done, and there's a lot of stuff that I've done that's very cringeworthy for sure. But like, that was tight.
It was good. It sounded good. Like when you said, I don't know.
Air check ourselves here. That was
right. Tight. Just if we could take a second to appreciate us. I know, like when you said, I don't know which one this is. I went, ooh, this could be ugly. But nice. Super glad that turned out to be a good one. But that was one of the things, like nobody was doing that. Nobody had the guts to do that stuff. You know what I mean? And I think it stood out from the norm, which is what everybody else was doing. So we were trying to find these ways to stand out. And when I remember everybody had a Friday song, like, I don't want to work, I just want to bang on the drum, whatever, like, you know what I mean, stereotype or trope that was there. And I remember we said, why don't we just write a new Friday song every week?
Yeah.
And we can have it talk about what happened in the week. And we did that for 10 years. Man. So what's your excuse, every artist?
Do you want to hear the first one?
Oh man, you have the first one? You actually have the first Friday Party Jam?
Well, this is the first one that we uploaded to YouTube, and this had to be pretty close to when we first started in April. So this is the Friday morning country party jam from 6/4/2010.
That'd be June. So if we went, okay. The first documented Friday Party Jam on our YouTube page. Because to be fair, your first couple of months in a job, you probably don't want those documented, right? Like, let's give them a little bit of time to get their feet wet and see how it goes. And then you start going, okay, now it counts. So
You ready?
maybe maybe June was when we started saying it counts. Are you going? Are you ready?
Going.
Happy Friday.
And every Friday we jam.
And we have a party.
We have a Friday morning country party jam. You ready?
I'm ready.
Take it.
Tonight we're going to the cards game. If you're going, let us know.
I will seriously buy you a beer just for putting up with our show.
Bull Day at Bush is the 15th. Hit the website and holler. Do it quick, though. They won't last. We got tickets for under $10 at 937thebull.com.
We should be totally embarrassed plugging the website in this song. And how come the guitar stops every time I sing?
I'm sorry.
Cause it's a Friday, yeah. Mason and Remy Friday party jam. Tonight we're going to the cards game, yeah. A Friday morning country party jam. All right, let's go. Crazy short week of news to recap. A lot happened, though, when you take a quick look back. Alan Tippergore got divorced. The ump blew a perfect game. We lost a golden girl, too. Rue McClanahan was her name.
Rest in peace, Blanche Devereaux.
Wait, Gary Coleman, Dennis Hopper, and now Blanche. That's 3.
Let's hope this madness is over.
Betty White will live forever!
The last golden girl standing.
2, 3. Who thought James Cameron could solve this oil leak? I'm pretty sure the rumor started as someone comparing it to Titanic.
That's a bit of a stretch.
You want to write the rest?
Sure. CMT thinks Nickelback has a country hit.
I disagree, but the poll in our blog says you like that kind of music. Cause it's a Friday, yeah. Mason and Remy Friday party jam. Cause it's a Friday, yeah. A Friday morning country party jam.
I'm through with sitting on the side of the studio with Mason in control of the whole dang show. I'd like to do a Nickelback version of our Friday party jam.
I'll have a quesadilla.
No quesadilla.
Cause it's a Friday, yeah, a country party jam. A Mason Remy Friday, a Friday party jam. Nickelback style, I can't believe that he hasn't stopped me.
And that's why I don't let you write songs.
But my Chad Kroeger impression is
really bad, is what it is.
Man, that was different.
Is that the end? Okay, wow.
That was different. So the format was a little bit different.
This is like how it changed over the years. That's the first time I've heard that in 10 plus years. We're doing a lot of that. I don't know if you've realized we're coming back. We're air checking ourselves for the first time ever.
The chorus was relatively the same, but somewhat. Like, yeah, that was interesting.
That was interesting to hear. But again, well produced, well written. Kudos to you. Well performed.
We spent a lot of time on those.
yeah. And you could tell, I think we could tell over the years that we were like, all right, let's tone it down.
Yeah.
We eventually were like, me, you, that was highly produced. When we first started, man, I don't know how much stuff we did that was live. You know what I mean? Not a lot of stuff. We did so much that was produced. We came in the morning. We recorded the song in advance so we wouldn't mess it up live on the air. We recorded Unprofessional news in advance so we wouldn't mess it up live on the air. Like,
yeah,
this was a big deal for us. Like, we were working really hard every day. Up at 3, 4 a.m. To the station by 5, on the air at 6 till 10, and then we were working hard into the afternoons sometimes and into the evenings when concerts came. So yeah, like we had just started getting our feet like wet with what we were doing. At this point, we had probably been there. If we started in April or May, and that was in June, this is probably about the time we were starting to move to town. Here's a big red flag I want to bring up. You remember when I lost my mind during the move? Because you came in and saved my life. I was like, I can't handle this right now. I had a huge breakdown, and I'm pretty sure like you helped me book a mover.
Did I really?
Moments. I'm pretty sure you did. And that probably a big red flag for the next 10 years of your life on how I would need your help to wipe my ass on so many occasions.
It's probably not to be, well, to be frank with you, there was a lot of those. So I don't remember that one specifically, but I do remember being very overwhelmed by, and I was thinking about this today in the shower, as you do, how with State Farm, this juxtaposition of I have this job, the golden handcuffs, all that, I could pretty much just stay at State Farm for the rest
It
of
was
my life kind of
structured.
thing.
Mhm.
It ends when I leave.
Mhm.
Radio does not end when you leave the building.
Right, right.
That could be physically like you have a remote broadcast. That could be you have a concert that night. Or it could very much just be the fact that you're always thinking of things to talk about the next day. So life experiences, things that you're doing, whatever. It's just like you always have to be on. I think that was probably one of the biggest changes for me, on top of living in a city all of a sudden that I'd never lived in before. But that was jarring for sure.
Yeah, it's a lifestyle. It's not a job. And I almost see it now as like the influencer lifestyle. Like I've said this before to you and probably many other people, that radio was like the first bloggers, the first gossip bloggers, and like the first social medias. They would tell you what artists did this thing. You know what I mean? You would hear about it through the radio, and now it's transitioned into, we became influencers, and influencers became what they are now. And now radio is trying to get influencers instead of radio people, it feels like. So in those moments, yeah, you had like a great like thing lined up, and then you still wanted to go out and do this thing. You had a 9 to 5, and then you had a life. But like I said, radio is a lifestyle, and it's not just a job. And what I didn't realize was the harder you work at it, the better you will be. I thought, I'm coming into a big company. They're going to support us. They're going to give us this chance. We're going to make $40,000 a year. And then we'll kick so many asses. They will have no other choice but to give us more money and to put us on a billion radio stations, because we're obviously going to be successful. Did you not just hear that Friday Party Jam? Like, come on. I definitely, so this was going to be, and what I had only known as, since I was 18, my life's work. So yeah, I took it really seriously. In one of the videos we released, you talked about seeing some things that were downright wrong. 80% of them, 85% of them, probably me. The things that I did were inexcusable, and I apologize and keep apologizing for them. You have this young mindset of how hungry you are, and you don't want anything to stop you. People tell you to be unabashedly who you are, and know what you want, and you commit to that until you can no longer commit to that, which for me was a couple years ago when it all came. Okay, cool. I was wrong, right? Like I'm just dying to be wrong in all these situations. I was wrong. It took a pandemic and a lot of other stuff to bring it to that point, but I was wrong. It wasn't what I was going to do for the rest of my life. But at that point, I was so gassed up that we were going to do so well. We were coming. This is our opportunity. I had worked for 15 years to get to this point in radio. This is my call. You had just started, but this was the call for you as well. So we really wanted to go hard. And this was before you were married. I think you had known your wife at this time, though, right? Like I had just met my wife as we were moving to St. Louis, but
the timing for both of us was about the same.
Yeah.
Because Lauren and I had kind of started dating before.
Yeah, you knew each other longer. Like you knew each other for a few years beforehand, but moving away was hard. And I think that, tell me if I'm wrong here, you guys bonded a bunch, while you were away, I'm sure. And the same for me, my wife being from the St. Louis area, I bonded in a different way of like, tell me about this place. And we got to know each other that way. But lots to go into on that if we want to during this time. So, we've talked about these red flags and the move coming to St. Louis, but we haven't talked a lot about country as an unexplored territory for us when we came to St. Louis. And I
so true. Like,
yeah, I said something in the last episode I want to kind of reference. I said I could grow old at country was my thought. And I want to kind of talk about that, because in top 40, like imagine this hairline playing Post Malone. Ooh, shit, he's got a country album, doesn't he? Never mind.
He's actually taking a lot of country artists' jobs right now.
It's happening for a lot of people out there. I was also super interested to see how the country music world handled the Beyonce situation. I know how I would have handled it, but I doubt the country music world handled it in the same way. But what I mean by I could get old in country is that I felt people who listen to country music were more accepting of older folks than the top 40 demographic would be. As I was in that club that we worked at, and I saw those 21-year-olds come in, and I saw my hairline receding, I remember going, I need to get out of here because I look like I am in a bad place right now. You know what I mean? Like, so it's a young man's game is, I mean, I'll say radio as a whole, but top 40 radio for certain. It should be young people who are talking to young people. And as I was getting into my 30s, I was less and less talking to those young people and just watching them at the bar and collecting my paycheck and going home. Right. So, I wanted to move away from that. And something I learned about country music through our crash course and education in not only the artists, but the lifestyle of country music was that they were very accepting of folks like that. They're real. There are real things that happen to them. Like people don't cover it up. Stuff happens. They talk about it. I think that was something we realized real early was when we would go like, what's the worst breakup you'd ever have? In a top 40 world, the call you would get back was like, he stole my car. But like in country, they go, my husband died. Right? Yeah. Like it hits abuse. Real stuff. Real. Like,
yeah. I think another interesting part of the growing old and country music line is you would go to any country show. We'll take I don't know, we'll put Brad Paisley or Kenny Chesney, you know, one of the OG, has been in the game for a while at this point. And at the amphitheater, it's spread out to where you've got the older generations that are sitting in the chairs, and then you move further and further back on the lawn and you hit the teenagers, right? They're all like, the lawn is just nothing but teenagers. So you have such a wide swath of people who are listening to this music. And that's not to say that, you know, Sabrina Carpenter doesn't have a whole wide swath of people listening to her as well, or Ariana Grande or whoever. But it just, to me, it seemed more exaggerated on the country side of things. When you go to a show, you'd see all shapes, sizes, ages, all the things, right? So it just felt very inviting. And in the world of radio, where things do move fast, kind of the golden handcuffs genre of radio, right? The one that we could just kind of grow into and grow up with.
Yeah, so here we are in our, like, Remy, you were about to turn 30. I don't even think you had at this point yet, right? You were in your 20s still.
Yeah, I was
I think I was in my 30s, but we were on the air across from people in their 60s. You know what I mean? Like people who, and think about having a job these days for 20 or 30 years. Like, whew, that's the golden, like the goose, right? We all want that. But it's such a crazy world now that it's just not, like, it's not a reality, especially not in radio, the way that trends move and the way that people can take, you know, a wave of popularity and capitalize on it and become their own entity at this point. Like it's just a weird world, wild world now. But this was, again, in the dawn of the internet, kind of like social media was just becoming a thing. YouTube wasn't even largely adopted. And that was one of our challenges now. We were going to bring the internet to country radio. And I think the stereotype was these people don't have a computer, but they all have phones.
Yeah.
And the iPhone was just starting to kick off in this time. So trying to find our niche in that world of connecting what is stereotypically the country and the sticks with what is the realistic city that we lived in, of St. Louis, which is like fast moving, internet, and Facebook and Twitter was just dawning. We were starting to get news more from social media than we were actual news stations.
Yeah.
So it was all part of our plan, I think, at the time to kind of bridge that gap. And in the only big problem that we had was we didn't know a Jason Aldean from a Luke Bryant, from a Jeff, whoever. We had no idea who was who. And we were coming into a situation where country music had been very old. George Strait's, Alan Jackson's, right? Like these older artists, heritage, classic.
Yeah.
And we were on a verge of the Jason Aldean, Luke Bryan, I'm going to say it, bro country. We were on the verge of the Florida Georgia lines. Remember when that song hit and we were like, something's happening here.
Yeah. Well, I think for me, it was Jason Aldean's Dirt Road Anthem.
Yep.
I was like, is he rapping?
This is different.
This is weird, but
shout out Colt.
I could get with this.
Shout out Colt Ford for actually.
Colt Ford.
He's the guy. It's his song, right? Like,
yeah.
Yeah. So like, it's just interesting how it works. And so we had the crash course in learning country artists' names, and then also knowing that, hey, in a few months, you're going to Nashville and you're going to interview all these people. Like, you're going to talk to these people. You should know their names.
Yeah.
we should not go on the air and say Luke Bryant, or make any kind of mistakes like that. Cause and it happens. It happened. I'm sure we did it more than once.
Yeah.
You know, when we're on the fly in there coming out of a song and another song's coming up, am I saying the next artist's name, or can I just not tell between who's who?
Yep.
Both, maybe. But the education process was super interesting. It was a crash course. I feel like there were flashcards at one point where we were like, "What is this?
Yeah.
Who is this?"
I remember I had signed up to do the Nashville the country music marathon long before we took the job, because my uncle lives in Nashville.
That's right.
And I'd run it before, and then we ran the half. And I remember on the way back from Nashville, and I still have this notebook somewhere, but it looks like a crazy person had a notebook, because it's just country artist names in blocks of me just writing them over and over again so that I could get their names down. And Luke Bryant was in there with a T many, many times in a row. So I was obviously reinforcing this terrible, that's not his name, his actual name. But it was very much like I know nothing about this genre right now. I don't know any of the artists, but I got to learn. So let's go, because we're going to be talking to him, like you said, at CMA Fest in literally weeks.
Were we an industry plant? I can't tell. I hear that question so much, it just popped into my head, but I think we were an industry plant. Like, I think radio was, we need these guys to make this country station like this era, this generation. Like,
yeah.
And it worked. Like, I think we did something, right? Like, we found something obviously that was working. So as we went through our crash course country, I'm trying to find another word that'll work with the alliteration, but it's just I'm old now. It doesn't come as fast. But the crash course we got in country music really was staggering, because it was a whole new world, a whole new genre of artists who then we were going to go in front of. And our philosophy, as we mentioned before, was to not be so focused on the music, was to just do the show that we wanted to do, was to have fun. Though the Unprofessional News, the Friday jams. All right, maybe we got to talk to Jason Aldean. Fine. But like, I'm going to move him to later because I have this other thing that's like, we seriously, many times we were told we have to interview these artists. And we were like, I don't want to. What is he doing? Like, why do I need... Look, I love Lee Greenwood as much as anybody else, but like, bro, why are we talking? I'm sorry. I understand. So when we had to talk to the Aaron Tippins of the world to be able to talk to the Jason Aldean and the Luke Bryans and those guys that were selling out the amphitheaters again and again, right? Like, we had to. You look like you have something.
I want to play something.
What do you have?
I want to play our first interaction with Jason Aldean.
Oh, no, okay. Our first interaction with Jason Aldean.
Yeah,
do you have a year?
I don't know. I don't know what was said here. A lot of things we are watching for the first time with you in a long time. So this is this is the first CMA Fest that we did.
Okay.
So this is us sitting down with Jason Aldean with a camera like literally in his face.
You're playing June 22nd, the Nashville Rising benefit for flood relief here.
We are, yeah. Nashville got hit pretty hard with flooding and stuff, and
like a baby.
Tim McGraw, Faith Hill, kind of put this thing together, and called us up and wanted to know if we'd be a part of it, and wow. I think when that happened, there was a lot of us that were kind of sitting around going, man, how can we do? Yeah, how can we do something to kind of help out? And so they ended up calling actually right after it happened, and so it was just kind of a perfect way for us to get involved and try to help raise some money and get some families back on their feet.
He's got the handler in the background too. Check her out with the Jason Aldean clipboard. By the way, so that you know, there's a couple of things. I want to set the stage, a couple of things. CMA Fest, Country Music Association Music Festival in Nashville every year. Radio stations come from around the country to have a radio room where these artists will come around. The girl has a clipboard and she walks up and like holds it up so you know who she has coming next, and she'll give you like 5 minutes. Good 5 minutes of Jason Aldean, cool. And it's just a cattle call, man. Yeah. Like these artists are coming one after another, and we are just praying that we don't call him Luke. Right. Like we're like, I just hope I don't mess this up. I know that I probably had more meltdowns during that time. We had 2 or 3 days that we were there, if I remember correctly, and we just had to keep doing it. And not only do it, but do it while we sent our show back to St. Louis, if I remember correctly, because we wanted to really be live from Nashville. So we would record these things, quickly edit them on our laptop, and send the MP3s back to whoever was in the studio to put them on the air in these little snippets. So much happened.
Yeah. And again, this goes back to the theme of Mason and I doing all of this by ourselves. So we don't have a producer until Chicago, I think, at this point. So we don't have any help when it comes to editing video to audio, all that kind of stuff. But CMA Fest, for me, I think the most stressful part about it wasn't the big artists. It was the hundreds of like maybe have a hit on the radio at some point in the next 6 months artists who thinks that they're bigger than they are. Do you know what I'm referring to?
I think I was just going to say, I think you know an artist I'm thinking of.
Yes.
And I'll bet you know it's Jake Owen.
It is Jake Owen.
We'll talk about more and more coming up, because not only did I have a story about Jake Owen being that guy who may be like, bro, you didn't prep for our interview. That later we brought up to Jake Owen, which is a whole story. But we had these big artists, small artists, all kinds of artists, drunk artists. Remember Uncle Cracker sat down at the table and was just wasted. Bless his heart. Shout out Uncle Cracker. And there's so much that happens at those CMA fests. I think we might need to talk about a lot of the things that happen in the next episode, because I want to, like, we're going to talk about just the lead up of where we were, but then like there are so many things that happen. So in the next episode, we'll talk about not only like the amazing people we got to meet, but some of the not amazing things they said to us. And we'll talk about the artists and more. But before we get too far ahead of ourselves, we were talking about the country music schooling, man, to see Jason Aldean. That was at this point 20 years ago, right? Like that was, I mean, maybe 10.
I think that was years ago. So that was 2010. That was 14
years ago. And he still looks kind of the same, just I don't know, Aldenier. I don't know what to say. Bless his heart. He's always been nice to us. I can't think of a time or a thing that would make me say, screw Jason Aldean. He was always cool when we worked with him, if I recall correctly.
Yeah. He's always been, I think honestly, it's more of his wife that has really gotten him into a lot more of the political situations. I honestly, from knowing Jason Aldean over the years, and I don't want to like put words into his mouth, but I think he's one of those guys that's just cool not being in the spotlight, not doing anything extra, interviews, all those kinds of things. But his wife, on the other hand, from what I'm gathering, is very much like, hey, let me get that teeth whitening endorsement, and I'm going to be out here and I'm going to be saying stuff. Now I'm just surmising. I don't know if that's 100% accurate, but from my perspective, that's how I read it.
We can talk about how she got us into trouble. Remember when I was talking about the internet heavy portion of where we were in the business, and how if you didn't share a story first, you were last? We shared a story first.
Oh, yeah.
Do you remember? I
remember this very much.
We got in like nationwide corporate copyright law problems with what we did. And this was when, God, it was such a time. It was the era of TMZ breaking stories. I remember before we took this job, I was live on the air when I found out Michael Jackson died because TMZ posted it.
Yeah.
I remember this time was when Jason Aldean was married to someone else, and he was in LA. She was on American Idol,
or just been on American. I think that's what that's what everybody associated this mystery woman with. They were like, oh, she was an American Idol contestant at one point. Yeah.
And then there was pictures that TMZ posted of Jason Aldean and Britney before they were married out canoodling.
Yeah.
Bro even had his cowboy hat off. Like, it was real. It was happening, if I remember correctly. We posted those photos and it got a bunch of shares, like we were talking about earlier. How you could go on Facebook and post a link and it would go crazy viral, get thousands of people. It did, and that also was not our photo to share. That was somebody else's photo. It was where we learned to copyright and how it works. How you have a license for a photo, because we cannot post a photo that isn't ours. And this is the age of the internet.
It probably seems very like, oh my gosh, you guys didn't cite your source, but it just wasn't. That wasn't a thing. I don't think we had corporate meetings about stealing pictures or using pictures that weren't yours until probably 5 to 6 years into our career together. That's when everybody started being like, well, you can't take this image from Getty Images and then post it on our blog, because obviously whoever the Clear Channels or the iHearts or whoever would be implicated by your decision to put a photo that wasn't yours on the website.
Right.
But we didn't even link back, I don't think.
That's the thing. Very funny when you think about it. First off, you used to need an FCC license to do what we're doing. You don't need that anymore. So there's no like checks and balance system on people doing things the right way. Yeah. Journalism tells you cite your source, right? Like, I mean, or I guess maybe not if it's a secret source. Anyway, but you get what I'm saying. Like, even if you're going to make a paper that you're going to turn in for college, you would be like, this is how I found out about this.
Yeah.
But not us.
First. We wanted it. We wanted it to, like we had said earlier, if you're the first one, you're going to get all the shares. You're going to get all the interaction. You're going to get the views. And then in turn, we going to get that bonus money.
That's right. Because there was an online bonuses set up to promoting the website. And so our website would get thousands and thousands and thousands of views because we were on the pulse of all these viral stories. And if you could first hit them, everybody else would come to your page. Yep. And I remember this was the era of like, we would be planning the show in the afternoon and somebody would put something on the air and we was like, dang it, we were going to do that yesterday. Wipe it off the list. Right. Yeah. Like, because they took the views from it. It was going to be gone. It was a dead topic at that point. So we were like really riding like the edge of what was happening in that moment. And nobody was doing that in country music at the time. So like, there's some argument to say like maybe the country audience wasn't looking for it either because it hadn't been established yet. There was no, TMZ of the country world. There were 3 country websites and they all shared the same content, from the same people. And sometimes it was content we generated by talking to artists.
Just pre-whiskey riff days.
Yeah. Any of those, there was barely a couple of them. I feel like the old man in the room saying when CMT played videos, but I don't know if they did.
Taste of Country was probably
one of them.
That's probably one of the old school ones.
Yeah.
The boot. Yeah.
Yeah. But this was the dawn of finding out information for yourself. This was coming from the age of it's 10 o'clock, time to find out what's on the news, to I'm plugged in every day, all day, every night, all the time. Right. Like, there's no time anymore. We as humans are just chilling unless we actively work toward it. Because it's like, you have to make a point to do that now because we're so inundated with stuff.
I just remember if something happened in the country world or elsewhere, I just remember immediately communicating with you about it and just saying, do you want to post this? Do you want me to post this? Like, we wanted those views. And even if it was a repost of the story and it had no substance whatsoever, just one of the views. And
then it could fill a slot the next day on the show. Like on the next day on the show, it could be like, we'll talk about that at 8:10. We'll talk about that at 7:30. We'll talk about, we'll do the phone topic of the unprofessional news. We're coming into, I never wanted to do the same thing every day of my life. And even though we did, it was always different. And I feel like that was the draw for me to radio, was like, it's going to be exciting. We're going to have fun. It's going to always be different.
You know what I've found out about myself as I age?
What's that?
I don't necessarily like that. And I don't know if I convinced myself that I like that I liked the different days. Like, we're not doing the same thing every day. But I tend to, and maybe this is why it was really stressful for me, because I never knew where the end was, because there wasn't an end.
There wasn't.
Of day. There was never an end of day. And any job that I've ever worked on, whether that be I installed radon mitigation systems in college for a summer, and the day was as long as the project took to complete. So like I never knew when that was ending. And I think that difference in the day-to-day tasks and things that we were doing stressed me out a lot, and that brought that stress level up. But I convinced myself, because I think it's cooler to say that you like the difference. You probably actually genuinely believe that, but I'm saying for myself, convincing myself that I was cooler than I was by saying, "Oh yeah, it's like a different thing every day. I love it. It's awesome."
You're like, I hate this. I can't.
But I think that I've learned about myself that I like structure a lot.
Yeah.
And I guess that's just something I've found as I've aged through radio. And this was in my 20s. And
it was chaotic because you were coming out of a very organized State Farm.
Oh my gosh, yeah.
I don't want to say dry, but like probably a lot more dry than radio was in the way of like, we have we have procedures, we have accountability for things. I work in video games now, which is more corporate than I ever thought it would be. And it's very funny how we did this weird thing like this, and that I was in this chaotic radio world and you were in this very organized world of what you were doing. And when we hit, like we almost went like this now, where I'm in this very, so which one was I? Anyway, the structure is like, for me, every day I have this like recurring meetings, very structured, and I know what I'm doing. And yeah, my day ends at a certain point, you know what I mean? And now that's what I do, which is what you were doing. And it just blows my mind sometimes in that our paths crossed in this different way, because now I live in your hometown and work from home and have these, what I feel are like pretty great golden handcuffs that I can do this job that I feel like is good, but I also don't feel like I'm going to get fired every day, which is something that comes with radio, because it can happen.
Gosh.
It can happen like that.
Sure.
There's so many of those weird radio things that we want to get into. I remember my mentality. And by the way, Mark, who was our boss, was also my boss when I was young and doing the night show like you were doing at WB&Q. And I remember one of his philosophy points was like, if you are not on the air causing headaches for your program director, you're not doing your job. And that was my mentality as an air talent, was I'm supposed to make my boss mad. You can see how I misunderstood. You can see how I may have been confused and may not have totally understood. But I feel like looking back, that was something that dominated my brain, because it was a tip that someone gave me. And I felt like he meant, obviously, if you're not doing things on the air, to make people call him and say, hey, what's going on? Or if you're not giving him the headaches of what you're doing on the air, then you're not doing your job. And I very much had that strategy when we came on the air. I wanted to be someone, not necessarily, I'm no shock jock by any means, but if you saw the last episode, there are little times like during the Shampoo video, I decided like, this is when we pull out the whatever, you know what I mean? Not too far, but just far enough to kind of be a little bit shocking or say something that is like unexpected, because I like to be unexpected. So I had this mentality of being entertaining, and we had the show structure of the Friday party jams and the Unprofessional news that we were doing pretty regularly. We had spent time listening to these other shows, specifically WIL, as it was the direct competition. And they were like, it was an older show. They had been on the air for a long time. I don't think they would even entertain the thought of saying the word Facebook on the air at the time, right? Like, we forced that hand. We forced them to get involved with the social media game because we were so in tune with it, and they saw the results and they saw what was coming for it. So as we were observing all these shows and going to these concerts, we were realizing that these folks sat in such, and I'm probably gonna make some people mad with this. I don't know. I love like everybody that we've worked with and met, but these folks were in such a position of entitlement, no competition, nobody in their zone, because they had been the country station for 20, 30, however many years in St. Louis. And whatever this thing that just popped on from this big country or from this big company, not real. We were here in St. Louis, right? Like, that was the mentality, and they were untouchable. But then we came in and we touched them. So what happened was, I remember specifically going to concerts and seeing them go backstage, and that was it. And I remember going, why aren't they like, people want to meet them? People want to talk to them. People want to interact with, they listen to them every day. Why are they acting like they don't want to be out there? And this was where we saw the weakness in the armor of boots on the ground. Our strategy was going to just go and get in front of them and say, this is who we are. Listen to our station. And as much as we could get into the world of the country music listener and expose ourselves to them. If they were having a party, we wanted to be at that party. That was our strategy, was getting right in there.
Yeah. I think it was maybe the second year that we were there that we started the photo opportunity at concerts. And I think that was a huge hit. I don't know if it was a brainstorm who came up with the idea, but I remember making signs for the Brad Paisley show. And it was just for like whatever the name of the tour was, the We Are the World tour or whatever. From Brad Paisley.
Yeah.
But I had concert 1 because that was the big draw for anything at the amphitheater. Was you get the pack, you get the season pass, so you go to every single show. And a lot of people bought lawn.
Yeah.
And if you could afford it, you sat in a seat, but it was just to be at the show. So I figured, okay, well, let's make these like a collectible item. So every single show you go to is concert 1, concert 2, and you come take a picture with Mason and I. And I remember we made Zach Brown Band beards one time. We had intern Alex in a pool, a little kiddie inflatable pool, because it was super hot, and he was the lifeguard, and we had no socks on. And I just like those moments for me, as in the grand scheme of things, of how many people you touch in a week on the air from them hearing you, could be in the neighborhood of 500 to 600,000. At a concert, way less. But the impact that you make when you talk to someone and you hug them or you shake their hand, you just have a good conversation. It started to pay off. And I remember sometimes our lines being so long. And I just remember the other radio station taking pictures and then they all of a sudden had photo ops, and they still have photo ops. We were still setting those photo ops up. And I remember and I don't want to take credit for photo ops, but
we invented photo ops, by the way. I just want to make sure everybody knows.
At a country concert, it became a thing.
Yeah.
And that
it was a great idea. The first off, the gotta catch them all kind of aspect of collect them all, right? That was brilliant. But then, like I was saying, they didn't want to talk to anybody. So we were like, let's talk to everybody. I remember vividly seeing one of them go, no, I can't, I gotta go. I can't take a picture. And I remember we were all together. We went to the green room. He went for a beer. You didn't have time to stop to take a picture because you wanted to get a drink. I get it. I'm sure that there are some people who are like, yeah, I didn't either. But that's where we saw the weakness. So that's where we, like you said, we started making signs and started creating that opportunity to come meet the people you listen to every day. And I think that set us apart.
Yeah, we'll get to this in a future episode. But we had a pirate ship at one of these things.
Yeah.
We had a pirate ship photo opportunity. It just got outrageous, and it was so much fun. But every once in a while, because I friended everybody in that era on my Facebook page.
Yes, we told everyone to tag us. That's right. Yeah. We were telling tag us, don't forget to tag us. And that was how we grassroots.
So I have memories that will come up 14 years ago, 13 years ago, and it's us at a concert.
Every day.
Yeah.
Bro. Just about any day I sign into Facebook, I'm hit with a memory of you and me and some random person at a concert. There were so many concerts over the 10 years that we did this, that it feels like every day I have a memory of those concerts. And I love that. I love that because that was how we did it. That was boots on the ground. That was 20,000 people every time that we could go, hello, 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 and listen to our show tomorrow morning. Listen to make sure you listen, because we had a mic out there with us sometimes, and we were doing after show stuff, and we were talking to people on the air. We would talk to them and then air it the next day, or we'd go backstage to talk to an artist and air the interview the next morning.
Yeah.
So while everybody thought we were just partying at every concert, no, the same thing. We were working. We were working hard every single time to try and get that stuff back on the air. Just the two of us. No producers or none of that. Making Friday jams, making interviews with artists when they come to town, doing the unprofessional news, float trip jams. It's a whole thing that maybe we'll talk about in a future episode. I don't know how much we need to go into that right now, but like it's kind of the same thing.
You don't want a float trip jam?
Do you have one? I mean, is it the first one? Because it's like, okay, I'm good with that. We can totally do that. But this was one of the big events that the radio station hosted every year and still does, which is kudos to that station and that team for keeping an event around for a long time. That's not an easy thing to do. And it's really the biggest thing that they've had going for ever is this float trip. And it's the Super Bowl of the year for the radio station, right? Like this is the biggest event, biggest opportunities for them to make money on sponsorships, and biggest opportunity for us to connect with our listeners, because it was specifically this radio station's, float trip. And so we did what we did and made a song about it.
If you're in the Chicagoland area, I don't know that float trips are super. So if you're listening as a Chicago listener, float trip is essentially thousands of people on rafts at the same time on a river that cannot support that many rafts. So it's a bottleneck all the way down this river, but drinking.
It's the biggest party I've ever seen.
Yeah, it's huge. It's a camping event. So you do it twice. You drink one night, you float the next, you drink that night, and then everybody goes home on Sunday. But there's concerts as well.
Mm-hmm. It eventually expanded to 3 nights: Thursday, Friday, Saturday, in some years and stuff. So you would go Thursday, set up your campsite, crash out. Friday, party, crash out. Saturday, float. Then a concert again. Like there's multiple concerts, camping, floating. Like you could hop on the inner tube and just float down the river. Now I grew up in Michigan and we had that. We went tubing, just like very calm. Never at the level that it was when we went to this float trip, which was, I think, on the Merrimack and the Hoosier River. So it's like down there. Right?
Yeah.
So this is, maybe something you've never heard of, but is a big deal for not only this station, but I think a lot of folks. I think it's a big Missouri thing, especially with the Ozarks and the number of rivers and stuff.
Very much.
It was the big, like, keystone event for this radio station. So we did songs about it. And it just so happened to be right after, like, a lot of our inspiration, I think people can tell, is in the Lonely Island and Andy Samberg. And,
God, I miss those guys so much. I think about it daily, how much I miss the Lonely Island and those shorts, those music videos that they did. It was so inspiring and so much fun.
And so of course, I'm on a boat with T-Pain, inspired our first float trip jam. Note the branding, by the way. Every song we ever did was a jam. Like, I mean, how can you can't say every song we did wasn't a jam, because we specifically branded it that way.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Definitely wasn't a jelly, that's for sure.
Nope. It's a float trip jam.
Pause real quick.
Brilliant.
See the line down at the bottom of that?
Yeah.
I never could get that off. I don't know how that was. It was in every single video.
It was one pixel at the bottom of that image.
All I needed to do was just crop it a little bit.
Nah.
I hadn't figured that out yet. So
I love this intro. THX all day.
What's up, guys? What's happening, man?
Hey, Brizzo.
Anyway, float trip time. 3 fit in the cabin, so it'll be me, Mason, and Remy.
What am I doing over there? We never sat like that.
There was never, no, not at all. I'll give a shout out to Dusty for coming in and being in the videos with us and being a good sport about this, because didn't know how it was going to go. We had just met like in the months prior. We didn't have any like creative juices between us. Like we had just, we were figuring out, like it was just us, like Remy and I, and we had this idea and we came in, and thankfully everybody played along with us on a lot of levels, because they could have been like, what? No. But D-Pain was a good sport here.
Yeah, this is also, we're setting this up because we are so short-staffed and it just is Mason and I. Mm-hmm. We're setting this up to be able to remove me from the video so that I can shoot it.
Because he's filming.
Yes.
We made a storyline to make sure you knew why Remy wasn't on camera.
Yes.
Because we did not have a budget for a video clip. I think something we always thought we would have was like, once we pop off, they'll hook us up with production money. Like they'll understand that we can be so much better. Spoiler alert, they never did. Later there were a ton of people who helped us. So I'm just kidding. But in this, Remy was shooting the float trip video, and so we made it a plot point as to why he wasn't in the video.
Let's just watch a little bit. We don't have to watch the whole thing.
No. Actually, I already guaranteed it to my buddy D-Pain. Cool.
Oh, snaps! Get your towels ready. It's about to go down. Everybody get on your tube or in your canoe or lay on your cheap little inflatable raft. Get your beers.
Hey, isn't this song like 2 years old?
You know what, dude? That's why you're not going. I'm on a float. I'm about to float. Fasten up your life jackets, cause it's almost time to float. I'm about to float. I'm gonna float. Last weekend in August, we're going on a float trip. I'm on the bull float trip. Take a look at me. Already sunburned. It's not even 3. A whole weekend to party. The sky is clear. The sun shines on 6,000 people every year. We float all day. We party all night. Keyword float when you hit the Bull website. I got my water wings, flippy floppies, and my beers. Never learned how to swim, getting laughed at by my peers. I'll put my toes in the sand like the Zac Brown band. Me and Billy posted up, drinking our hand. Leave your cell phone at the campsite. Find shade under a tree. No cell service here. Relax. No need to thank me. Quick sign up. This trip has limited occupancy.
Yeah, I never thought I'd be on a float. That shallow water we roll.
Dude, I want to say shout out to Diego. Do you remember Diego?
I do. Yeah, please move on. No offense.
Okay.
Thanks, bud. Thank you. So there's
Diego
so much
came in with the auto tune.
He did.
That was like a thing that didn't really exist at that time. It was easy to get, but
yeah, I was gonna comment on that. Like, he sounded good. Like, and that was thanks to Diego. And this was not at the Bull Float trip. Sorry, it was on a river in St. Charles, if I remember correctly.
It was
wasn't
on the Katy Trail on the Missouri River. Yeah, that's the Missouri River in the background. And we ended up at some lake or something that Dusty's family owned or something, and that's where the dock stuff was.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Or it was a friend of a friend. I don't remember, but like
you never shot a float trip video at a float.
Yeah. Well, I remember we went down one time in advance, like days before, or months before, but like never at the float trip because obviously we needed it to promote it. So crazy to see that and think about like where we were in that time, and just very, very funny to look back on a lot of these moments. So shout out to a lot of people that were involved in those moments, especially like everybody at Ozark Outdoors, who was so cool during all those years. Man, there's just awesome. There's so many great folks who like a lot of what we did wouldn't have been great without a lot of the support that we had, and they may not have understood what we were doing, but they were like, okay, yeah, cool, go for it, whatever you need, let us know what you need, you know, in some of those times. But there was a lot of that. It was a weird world when we came down there to jump into that stuff. So
that was I remember that was, I think in the interview process, Mark had said, well, we do this thing, it's a float trip, we get, you know, C/B level artists, you know, someone that's well known to come on out, and that, you know, everybody floats for a little bit, but there's always a song that the morning show makes, and that's where I was like, we're gonna knock this out of the park. So
no problem, right?
Go. Let's go knock this. This is like my wheelhouse in the video world, so let's go.
And we did more than just a song. We made a video and brought it into the next world. It was pretty cool to see what was happening there. But I just remember so many of those moments where this other station in town had been so dominant for so many years and had such a hold on the audience. And we were starting to make headway with folks because we were moving from the world of I only listen to country music to I listen to all kinds of music. I remember this philosophy that they told us, and this is what reminded me of Nelly and St. Louis. And the biggest little town in America is you are 5 minutes from a cornfield and 5 minutes from the ballpark, like 5 minutes from the club and 5 minutes from the country. That's why these kind of things can work in an area like St. Louis. It's why they like Nelly and Tim McGraw and it's why that song works, right? Like,
yeah.
And it's why I think why we worked is because we were not like big city guys, but we weren't really like country folk either, for what it's worth. But we found a way to like bridge these two things together through these different songs and these bits that we did. I remember being at all the concerts, going into the green room and having people go, "Oh, hey, that's you. Nice to meet you. I heard that thing you did," and like feeling, wow, we're actually doing something. It felt good in those days and I guess months, because it took a year, I think, for us to get our footing. And I know that we talked about how we were not making a lot of money when we started. That didn't last very long. Do you remember how long it was before we re-signed? Because it wasn't at the end of our first contract, was it?
No, because I don't know if I'm jumping too far ahead, but I think we both, or you thought that we were done when the radio station decided to play all Christmas music one year, or the first year we were there.
They did a country Christmas. Because that's right. Because I think that was about the time that our boss told us he was leaving too, right?
Yeah. So it was like Boatload of Toys. It was the first Boatload of Toys. And I remember we were playing the crap out of some country Christmas, everything. And here's me just like super naive, having nothing to, I'm just like loving this Christmas music. And you're like, we're probably getting fired, just to let you know. So Mark had the idea to play Christmas music because it does so well.
Right.
Any station that plays Christmas music solely, and that's why they start on November 2nd or whatever day, so that they can get those ratings for those 2 months. And it's astronomical. Like it's double to triple what that station would normally get. You can complain all you want about those Christmas stations, but they pull numbers in November and December.
Yeah, and that speaks to a couple of things actually that are important here. The story that I haven't left out yet. In Bloomington Normal and in a lot of cities, they rely on people to go, "What station you listening to?" "Oh, I listen to this station, right? I listen to this station. I listen to this station." Then you send it in. In big cities, it's different. They have a little device that actually picks up the sound from the radio station so they can really see what you're hearing and what you're listening to. And when you're out at the store during Christmas, hearing the Christmas music, it's everywhere and you can't get away from it. So it brings in those big numbers. And we were just coming into St. Louis in a time where that new ratings period had been noticed, and people were getting fired because it wasn't just me going, "I love Jeff, the trailblazing night jock on whatever. I listen to him all day." When you know damn well he's not on that all day. She doesn't have the radio on all day, but you could really start to see the data. And that's where the change kind of came through in radio, is with this. You noticed how much those Christmas stations like actually were heard, how many people turned them on in their stores, and how much exposure, how much reach there really was. So really a brilliant idea in Mark's mind, but in my mind, the scariest thing ever, because radio stations usually switch to Christmas like a cash grab in that moment and go, and then we're going to switch to something else because the last format didn't work out. We were in a brand new station, and it wasn't a brand new station. I guess I should say that the station was around for several years. We were coming in after a well-loved personality. I remember that. A lot of people really liked what was happening before us. Don't know if they were understanding what we were doing. And then we went Christmas. So yeah, I probably spiraled a little bit in that. It was like, oh no. And we were broadcasting live from the parking lot of a Bass Pro Shop for 3 days. Not that thing that we were talking about in the beginning where the guy was camped out for 3 days at the Cardinals game and where he really went home at night. No, not that. We actually stayed in that camper, at least for like a year or two, right? Like at least in the first couple of years. But anyway, we were living there. People would come by 10, 11 o'clock with donations, and we'd be like, "Hello, thank you. We have to be up at 6 a.m. Goodbye now." We were.
I have visual. I'll give you visual. This is a short clip.
Okay.
Hey, Mason and Remy live in the parking lot of the Bass Pro Shops in St. Charles. Hot hands, high five. Yeah! Check out these toys. Boatload of toys going on right now. Keep going. Look at all this. It goes all the way. We didn't want to get them frost-covered.
They were totally frost-covered.
But it's Christmas. Look at all these toys. Look at this. We got to fill this whole boat. We need your new unwrapped toys to donate a whole boatload of toys to youth in need here in St. Charles. Thank you so much to everybody that has donated today. And we need your help. We're going to be here all weekend in the parking lot of the Bass Pro Shops in St. Charles, living in this RV. Let's go take a look.
Let's go, yeah. See, the RV is equipped with many things, such as a shower. There's a turlet for us to do our thing.
All the modern.
We don't have to watch the rest of this. It's basically an RV. But yeah, I remember, I think we got like 3 boatloads that year, and it was kind of grueling, but it grew. And it grew into something really special. I think they still do it.
I think they do too. Youth in Need was the charity that benefited, I remember, and amazing people who obviously could use your help all the time. Not just Christmas. Like there's so many people who could use the help. So partnering up with different organizations like that was part of the strategy too, right? Like when I talked about how real the people who listen to country music are, I think it's because they've been through real things and they've experienced things. And they've come out on the other side of things. And for us, like trying to help kids have a Christmas, that's kind of what we were trying to do there. That hit home for us. So let's, obviously let's rally the community and try and get them together. And it went from, just a couple guys. And did we have anybody perform at that one? I don't think we did. Or was it the next year that we started having performers and it turned, and then there was a concert was born, and like there's all kinds of things that came from that, but it's very cool.
Lauren Elena and Hunter Hayes, I think both sang on boats at one point. One year we had like 8 legit boats or 9 legit boats, because there's a way that you can prop up the toys to make it look like there's a full boat, but it's not really a full boat. But I remember looking at all these boats and I was like, gosh, this is a lot of response. From the response was excellent. But it was, and I think that might have been when I was like, I think this Mason and Remy thing in St. Louis is working, and I felt very much on top of the world at that point. And that was awesome.
So. And in normal fashion, I was the exact opposite and fearing for our job. That was me every day. It could have been a great day, and I'd be like, today's a great day. I got so much, but I'll probably get fired. That was normal. There were things that we were doing that were starting to stick. Like this had stuck. The Friday Party Jam was kicking off. Like we had a summer of concerts where people wanted to take our picture. Like that's cool. Like things were working. We were going from town to town, trying to you're so in radio, right? Like you're in this circle of wherever your antenna reaches. And there are all these little towns. So yeah, we're talking about St. Louis, right? Like that's here in the middle, but what about like this place out here or this place out here? So we had devised a plan to have, I guess, Town of the Week. Do you want to watch? You have that?
We could watch just a little bit, because this was actually on a not awesome camera, and it irked me so much that this was in standard definition, and the camera was awful, the microphone was terrible. However, this is a great example of us boots on the ground for sure. This is the neighborhood of the week, Florissant.
The winner of this week's What Neighborhood poll is Florissant, Missouri.
Hi, I'm Mason.
I'm Marisa Ruiz Marshall.
Okay, Ruiz is what we're talking about. We're here in what I'm told is the oldest Mexican restaurant in town.
That's true. That's true. El Serape had that title. They actually started, I think, 6 months earlier, but they've closed, so we claimed the title.
It's there now. How many years ago? It's been in the family.
1966.
66. Was your grandmother? What would you say is probably the most ordered floral bouquet or basket?
What's your most ordered floral boutique is what the hard-hitting question was.
Oh, listen, they weren't all bangers. Okay, let me say that first. We didn't always hit a home run.
I remember Mark having us do that, and it was mainly to get us familiar with the area. He was like, "Here's your, today you're going to Florissant. Today you're going to St. Charles. Today you're going to wherever." It honestly ended up being what are considered hot zip codes,
right,
in the ratings world. And
Yeah.
I think we can mention Nielsen at this point, and
Yeah,
because we're
yeah.
out, whatever.
Yeah.
But you can see on a map where the most meters are.
Those devices, yeah.
Yeah. So we would go to those places and just be there. And, you'd set up a remote, or you'd do the neighborhood of the week, which was Florissant that week or whatever. And we would just talk to people and just be in the community. And then when you're on the air, you know how to talk about that place because you've been there. It's an experiential thing. But I thought that was kind of a brilliant thing as well, regardless of how terrible the video and audio was. It still was, it was a good experience.
For sure. And yeah, it was that more of that boots on the ground mentality, get into the communities. We had seen that the competition was in their golden tower, right? Like we could see they weren't coming down from the tower. The king's in the castle and feels like he's undefeatable. And we were slowly rallying the troops down in the city square to start an uprising. I've been watching Game of Thrones. I'm sorry. Anyway, the fun of it all happening, like, and I know it was intense. I barely remember half of it. I do remember sitting in that booth at the Ruiz place that you just play. I remember talking to that woman, and I remember thinking, did she just mention her competition? Like she talked about another Mexican restaurant. I was like, this is okay. Yeah, no, that's fun. It was just very funny. Just a funny time of some of the things we were doing. I know as far as each of these episodes go, we want to touch on some different eras of our story. And I think we're coming to the end of like our introduction to St. Louis and our introduction to country music. All these things were happening and it felt great. We had I had never been to a Major League Baseball game. I'd never been to an NFL game. You know what I mean? Like I was living this big city life all of a sudden, and we were making like more money than we'd ever heard of, which wasn't a lot that we didn't know, right? Like we didn't know it wasn't a lot at the time, but we were still doing so much and it felt so good. And I think at this point we were like, we want to start, making friends and allies in other cities. You know how every time there's like a World Series, somebody on the air in one town is on the air with somebody in the other town, and they make some garbage bet about some crap so that they can make you think that they care about whatever sport is happening. I'm sorry if I'm just tearing it all down to the basic whatever. But I remember that and going, no, we don't want to do that. And we ended up doing it anyway so many times. We wanted to do some of that stuff. We needed to make friends in other cities and because we worked for such a big company, we could share assets. You know what I mean? Like if we made a thing, it might work for you. And that was always the part I didn't like about networking is that I'm going to pull back the curtain and might make some people angry. A lot of the bits on the radio are fake.
A lot.
Like,
yeah.
And they wanted us to do those a lot. We didn't want to do those, but we did them sometimes. I hated it. I hated it. I still think about it. I hated them.
I want to call out probably one of the most used.
Do you specifically want to name it?
Yeah, I don't care.
Okay.
War of the Roses.
Okay, yeah. Yep. Mm-hmm.
Is 150% fake.
So actresses playing a part, right? Like they're like, you are going to be someone who got cheated on. You are going to be the guy that cheated. And it's improv at that point, unless you write them some notes. Like I remember it. We
did it. We
did it for a minute. Yeah. Yeah. It felt terrible. It felt terrible. Like it's
we
not
will 100% get into that.
Not what I want to do, but I'm going to be 100% honest that there are probably 5 big shows in the world. And I feel like at least 3 or 4 of them are built on that. Only like it for me, it goes back to like reality TV, right? Like it's all that stuff. It's some producer writing a thing to make people think. There were multiple times people came to us and were like, Drew, like Jerry Springer. You remember the end of Jerry Springer where they would be like, hey, are you an albino monk who loves turtles? Call us. You know what I mean? Or whatever it is. Like they would be like, do that level of stuff. Like do that level of Jerry Springer stuff. I didn't want to be Jerry Springer. I didn't want to be fake. Like I think some of our best stuff was because we were authentic.
I will never forget when they pitched us, hey, you guys should do a bit called What You Doing at the Courthouse, and go up to people at the courthouse
In
and
the
ask
most
them what they're
dangerous
doing.
city in America, in St. Louis, where the most murders happen per capita in this or whatever. Like what you doing at the courthouse? Put a mic in front of their face. Was that a bit another show was doing? Wasn't it?
I think that might have been a Mark suggestion, but yeah, it had been done in other markets, and this was pre-sharing of ideas. Like, you wouldn't be able to see what Elvis Duran was doing in New York or what Ryan Seacrest was doing in LA necessarily. So there was a lot of sharing of this kind of these segments, these bits, these benchmarks. So
yeah, in radio. And with no social media, there was nobody sharing these things. So you never would hear the song from, New York on that show. We could play it. And many times radio people would take it and go, hey, I made this thing. Here you go. It's my thing. And they play it. It's not their thing. They didn't make it. They're subscribing to a service. It's fake. Everything's fake. Everything's garbage. Nobody's real. But we always wanted to be our own, like we wanted to create our own things so that because we were authentic. We wanted to be authentic and real and not like rely on that. And there were times where we had to because the boss told us to. There were times where they were like, we're the consultants and we know what we're talking about. It works for these guys, so it'll work for you. And there are guys that are still doing those things every day and cashing big paychecks. So more power to you, but it just wasn't what we wanted to do.
Yeah. That was a main thread for me through the initial like first 5 years of us being in St. Louis was authenticity, not using actors, not faking as much as we possibly could. And the other thing was not using prep services. So in radio, there are several different preps, what they call them prep services, where they basically distill the entire day that has happened and find the what's up in Florida, the Florida man. That's a prep service thing. They literally have Florida, most wanted list or whatever, and it's
a category in the show.
Category, yeah.
Florida stories, yeah.
Like I've often thought about going to one of these prep services and going on my personal Facebook page and just putting a bullet list of this is what every morning show will be talking about today. Mm-hmm. And guaranteed you'd be able to, it's like a bingo card. You would be able to do that.
Yeah.
Because everybody uses it. And I always looked at those and I was like, it's like cheating. It's good to kind of know, I guess, if you miss something or whatever, it's good to kind of see that and maybe hit something major that you missed. But I think we were pretty good at gathering our own stuff.
Yeah.
And I think that resonated because we resonated with whatever we were talking about on the air.
Yeah.
It didn't feel half-assed,
Yeah, because at that, like for some of those folks who were in their golden tower, they would just come in the morning, 5 minutes before they went on the air. Somebody would print off all the things and they would go, yeah, this, and this. And then they would just go home and go back about their lives. But we cared about it. We were cultivating ideas and creating bits and trying to like connect with people. So that wasn't what we wanted to do. And I can't say that we didn't the whole time, right? Like prep services were there and there were days where we didn't have content. And maybe we needed to go to, some story that was viral or whatever. But they basically, grabbed every story from the day and every headline and just, like you said, boiled it down. Here's an audio snippet. So all you need is this. I'm guilty of using it from time to time as well. But it wasn't what we wanted to do because we had our own. We knew everybody else would be talking about that stuff. The stuff we were talking about because we were so connected to social media and the rest. We were a day ahead of that. So at the point that we were sharing stories, the next day it would be in the show prep and the shows on the other stations were talking about them.
Yeah, that felt so good. Like that was always a win. Like, we talked about that like 2 days ago, bro. Okay.
Yep. Yeah. When we
would get rewarded for it at the time. That would come with views and interaction and reach, and that doesn't exist anymore on a lot of radio stations. But at the time, you were rewarded for that. So of course we were going to continue to go down that path as opposed to just ripping and reading everything from a prep site.
Yeah. The rip and read is definitely still happening. And I get it. for folks who do it. Sometimes you don't need more than that. Sometimes they don't pay you for more than that. I'm not gonna lie. I feel like the last gig that I had, I was like, I'm definitely not like being paid a solid amount here. So print that thing off and let's read it. You know what I mean? That's what I was doing.
In my story, at least, the prep stuff will come back. We'll get to that.
Okay. All right. More teases coming up. Well, there was so much there, you know, like in that time, this was when we were starting to pop off. People were starting to notice we were making a difference. People were starting to hear about us. There was a lot of like, you know, connecting to different radio people. Hey, I know a guy whose morning show is struggling. They'd like to talk to you and see what you're doing to try and figure out how they can, you know, do some stuff that like you're doing. Networking, right? Like we want to, there's reasons I was never a fan of connecting with other radio people. And it's a big part of our story, actually, an interesting part. But I know that, and Remy is way more personable than I am. I have reached my capacity of names that I can remember. So at this point, I was like, I don't want to meet anybody else. I'm going to lose a vital piece of information if I remember somebody else's name. But also, I feel like there was such a vulture mentality in radio to like, oh, I'm going to steal your bit. I'm going to steal your bit. And now we're in a world where you're not just a terrestrial entity. Everything you do is saved. Every podcast is uploaded. Every video exists. So if we do a Cardinal video and we take a job in Chicago, we are immediately the villain, right? Because it happened to us. It happened to us, and we'll talk about that. But they can see that, like they can talk about that. People could. I know there was a lot of moments where Remy wanted to meet other people and I did not. I'm very introverted, and I'm good with like this, and then I need to recharge this battery for like a week at this point, and then maybe I can do it again. But Remy wanted to meet everybody, wanted to talk to everybody. I was very much not that guy. Probably still am, for very good reason that will come up. We'll talk about, because networking kind of led to us losing our job.
A little bit.
Little bit. Well,
am I naming names right now, or are we leaving this wide open at the tease?
Let's take an episode, talk to the lawyers. I'm just kidding. Well, no, we can leave that for the next episode. What do you say?
Okay. I'll say that the name that I will say, that the name of the person that I reached out to get mentorship from and advice is one of the biggest names in the country world at this point.
Yeah.
So it's not Garth Brooks, but we do have a Garth Brooks story as well.
Speaking of, yeah. And in the next one, we'll talk about that too, because we got to meet Garth. Not the Garth you know. A different Garth. The real Garth. We got to meet business Garth. And we'll talk about that. We'll talk about how we invented Vine. What really happens at CMA Fest. How I embarrassed myself with a legend of the music industry. And how did we inevitably lose that morning show that was doing so well? We'll get there in episode 3. Appreciate you checking it out. Make sure you're following us on Instagram and everywhere. And here specifically, because if you're watching this, it's on YouTube. The subscription is free. We're not charging anything for this. We're not even making any money off of this, to be honest with you at this point. I mentioned it in the last episode. It's real good to be able to chat with you again and laugh and tell our story. So appreciate everybody coming along for the ride. All that and more is in the next episode. Anything I've missed or that you want to talk about before we jet?
No, I think we're good. I think the juice will be loose here coming up. This is where the plot thickens.
It is indeed where the tea doth come. So we'll get there in the next one. Appreciate it. Thank you. Good to see you again, my friend. We'll talk soon.
Thank you. Likewise.